A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Natural Medicine today. One of the central factors for being healthy and fit in everyday life is definitely our sleep quality. And who doesn't know suffering from sleep problems here and there, or maybe from breathing problems or similar? Joshua Coburg has developed a method how he can solve all these problems through his neuroscience. And I'm very happy to talk to him about it today. Hello, Joshua.
Hello, Karina.
Well, to be fair, you have to say your name is Joshua Coburg and you come from Coburg. And that is actually a bit confusing.
Confuse your interviewer.
Yes, of course, that definitely worked. And now it's also the time after lunch. But let's get to the subject of sleeping. That is a really important factor, what you can also see from such an afternoon low, if you haven't slept well the night before. As a neuroscientist, you always dealt with the topic subconsciousness and all these stories. What exactly have you developed for this topic of sleep?
Exactly. I actually got to it by sheer chance. We carried out a large study in 2017 with the University of Mainz. It was really only about the news in connection with language training. And then at some point, Dr. Henz said that all the EEG measurements actually show that someone who has trouble sleeping should have a real benefit from the news. And then I said, well, we have 35,000 customers by now. I know thousands of customers who slept better. Then she said, why we don't explain that, because it's a huge problem. I never had sleep problems myself. That's why it wasn't so dominant or present for me. And then she came up with a study by the DAK Health Insurance, which she then laid out for me and said that 80% of people who are working in Germany have sleep problems. That was actually the decisive factor, that we said that we can really help with the news. And then we started a study and developed a complete training system with the university.
Cool. 80%, this number shocked me too now.
It's incredible of people who are working. In other words, the people who are, so to speak, top performers. In our society, most of them suffer from sleep disorders.
Has that been differentiated more, or can you say, what are the issues behind it?
Well, since we actually approach the training more globally, we're not looking into the question of if someone has a physical deficit or a mental deficit, but we have set up a system with news with which we can actually get to any sleep problem. That was also the aim when developing this training.
And what does the news do now so that it can just...
Well, of course, I'm a neuroscientist. I'm not a sleep researcher. Of course, I approached it from a completely different side. First of all, I looked to see what are the causes. For example, that thought routines cannot be completed. What causes sleep problems from the physical side? So, what are the starting points? And if you look at that in the overall concept, then we always have a suboptimal regulation of our nervous system. This is basically the component through which we regulate physically, mentally, and also emotionally, somehow or not. And the exciting thing is, a lot of people say they can't sleep because they have back pain. Other people can't sleep because they're all occupied by their thoughts. They can't sleep because they have trouble with their children or something like that. So very different things. And during the development, I just had a look with the possibilities we have through the news. How could I bring these three levels, so body, mind and soul, into harmony? And that was the approach to my sleep training. And it's really very exciting to see how it succeeded. We did a study with 120 participants, and for 97% of them, we regulated sleep problems within 8 weeks. And it doesn't matter where they came from. So there was also, for example, a firefighter there who works 3 shifts, where you would actually say that this is so stressful for the body. You can't regulate that so quickly, but that also worked.
I also know from large automotive companies, when I give these lectures there, those working 3 shifts are tortured the most, I would say. Early and late shift still works.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they got some relief, that would certainly also be interesting for companies.
Absolutely.
Do you have that too, that corporations are interested in the concept?
That's unfortunately not the case at the moment. We're working towards it, but we didn't start marketing until May. That's why the whole thing is still relatively new. But we'll soon be offering this to larger companies too. Because if you only look at the losses there, we're talking about 1.8% of our gross national product that's lost through these sleep problems, so to speak. So we're speaking about billions that are lost.
Yes, it is also known that shift workers, in particular, have a significantly higher risk of diabetes and obesity, and therefore also other secondary diseases. And that is also the problem later. It even starts with snoring. You have shortness of breath, then become overweight from cravings due to tiredness. So it really is a spiral. Have you ever tried this with babies who do not sleep through the night? Can you do that, or are they too young?
Yeah, we haven't had any experience with that yet, so I think the youngest kid I've heard about that used it was 5 or 6. Exactly, but for me, it is shocking in general that children even have such sleep problems. I found that quite interesting, because I really assumed that it starts at some point in young adulthood. But we also really have students of 16, 17, 18 who have already sleep problems due to the pressure to perform.
Yes, definitely. There are also patterns that they get. Everything is connected again. Not being good enough, not meeting expectations, then putting pressure on themselves. And today in the system, you can see anyway that children are not treated holistically. With older people, there is often the situation that they generally have a shorter sleep cycle. Is there any knowledge that they might get back to a longer, deeper sleep?
Well, I've looked into the topic for 2 years now, with a lot of literature. I've also been in touch with many sleep researchers. So with older people, you can clearly say that the need for sleep actually decreases. So that means, as a rule, let's say a 65 or 70-year-old usually has a shortened sleep cycle, but rather has the need to have a sleep break during the day, for example. So a kind of siesta or a power napping, as one would say now. But basically at night, they actually sleep shorter, which isn't unusual. So this is actually normal.
You have now also written a book on the subject. What was your core topic there? What were you really passionate about? Or what do you want people to take with them?
So what I did in the book is that I looked at sleep from a different angle, so to speak. So maybe to explain this concept a little more, that is also the content of the book. So this subject of body, mind and soul is actually crucial. When I regulate the body, it automatically changes the mental situation. And also the spiritual. And spiritually, I always like to keep that a bit apart, but many people have a religious connection to that. Soul actually only means that it is the total combination of my thinking, feeling and my physical condition. You could represent that as your soul, so my overall life concept. And the interesting thing is, when I sleep well, so if I ask someone today who does not have any sleep problems, and I ask them, what are you doing to sleep well? People sit there and think about it for a moment, and then they say nothing. So I'm not doing anything. And that's actually the answer to any sleep problem. It's really very fascinating. And of course now, if I look at it from the brain side, then it gets interesting. Because if I don't do anything, then firstly, I allow myself that I'm doing nothing, I can relax, I can let go. Sleep is a little death, so to speak. So all of these compositions, and when you look at it backwards, we have then evaluated these study participants with questionnaires. And what's really interesting is that most of them no longer had a clear picture of the future. So they were under so much pressure. Maybe they weren't happy with their job, with their family situation, with their financial situation. So all these areas in which there was a certain dissatisfaction and a connection to dissatisfaction. And that's why I actually developed a sleep training with 7 steps. And through these 7 steps, which I explain in the book, I actually lead back to an optimal sleep pattern. That's actually quite simple again.
Okay, now I had a guest who said that you do a lot of therapy in your dreams and overnight with yourself. Was there any evidence that the topics were simply treated differently?
So there was no concrete feedback, but of course we don't change the way of dreaming or anything. Well, if you look at why someone is dreaming, then they actually have a relatively shallow sleep. So that means no permanent deep sleep phases. But they're actually always briefly present, and that's why they remember dreams. But basically, everyone dreams. Our brains are busy at night, all night. This is also something where we think we're resting. Physically, yes, but the brain actually processes at the same speed as it does during the day.
Okay, so when you sleep, you put on the news and then the body no longer snores? Or does it still snore, but you just sleep deeper? Or how is it?
Yeah, so when it comes to snoring, we have a significant improvement, absolutely. Ultimately, snoring is, again, a physical imbalance. So there are other factors too, obesity and so on, but basically when someone snores, for example, they have an imbalance in muscle tension. And after we simply tease the physical regulation with the noose, snoring also changes. So we also got very clear feedback in the study because, of course, we asked the participants about that.
If the snoring changes, then there are no more interruptions in breathing, right?
Well, we're not going that far at the moment because we haven't done a study in a sleep laboratory yet. This is now the next step. We're talking to the University of Frankfurt because that is very interesting.
It's definitely worth it.
Exactly, because that's really a topic that is hazardous to health, these interruptions in breathing.
Above all, the people who were actually in a sleep laboratory and then got this mask. That is really very restrictive when sleeping. You lie there like Darth Vader.
So we had participants who had sleep masks and who also had significant improvement. So usually vital signs are also measured there in general, because when you sleep with the mask on, it's recording the breathing rhythm, and we've already seen improvements.
Okay, great, really great. So now you've studied sleep quite well. What is the ideal sleep period? Does it make sense to sleep through the night? 8, 9 hours, or does it depend on age? What are your findings?
Exactly. So I would say there are different statements to that. So with a healthy adult, we say 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That would actually be what you could call optimal. The problem is, however, that you can't generalize this. There are people who need 9 hours of sleep, but there are also some that only need 6 hours of sleep.
I think a key point is that you fall asleep before midnight, isn't it?
Exactly. That is definitely very, very beneficial. So this is really clearly proven, medically and neuroscientifically. If I go to bed before midnight, I'd say it's best to go to bed between 10 and 11. Then I definitely have a deeper sleep phase, which is very, very interesting. I can actually say it even more simply. In Indian medicine, it's said that the optimal sleep behaviour is to go to bed at sunset and to get up at sunrise. Now, if you have no feeling for it, and I used to think that too, when I read that for the first time I thought it was way too long, but that's not true at all, because if you go to bed at 10 o'clock, in summertime for example, then the sunrise is already at 5:10 or 5:15 a.m. And I've tried it myself, it's very interesting. So this adaptation to natural rhythms is quite fascinating, but I also have to say that it's almost impossible to implement in our living circumstances.
Yes, but above all, there is the opposite knowledge. For example, that the body also only becomes productive from 9 a.m., especially for students. Do you know what I mean?
That always depends on when you get up. So you have to take that into account.
So when our children get up at 5 a.m. with the sunrise, they'll be fit in school by 7:30.
Exactly.
I'll pass it on like this.
Pass it on like this. What, of course, is a huge problem. You have to be very clear here. I have also evaluated several studies on this, and I have to say very clearly is the influence from digital devices. So that means falling asleep in the evening with the phone in your hand. or just watching TV until the end. That actually does something to the brain activity. So we have a blue light, we actually simulate day, and then postpone the process into the night, where melatonin should actually be released. So melatonin, to explain, is basically the sleep hormone, and I actually need half an hour for that to release, so that I then slide into this sleep. We often take this away by using such devices.
But you could at least turn this blue off. I think that is now possible with the devices.
With a lot of new devices.
Because now they want to avoid the follow-up lawsuits. Because they already know it's dangerous.
But of course it goes on. Wi-Fi frequencies or cell phone networks. If I have that on my bed, I describe all of this in the book. And I've also backed it up with numbers, so you can really look at what it does to our brain. Anyone who's understood this may be willing to avoid these things.
And your news, you wear it on your body at night too. Does it have any negative impact while we talk about this now?
Absolutely. So you can wear it day or night, also for the sleep training. It's actually just about the mental setting. But the News itself has no radiation. So that means we have two little pads. This is actually a loudspeaker principle. Only on an ultrasound basis. And we apply this to the body through vibrations. It all comes from dolphin research. You know the reports about handicapped children with dolphins in therapy? That's where it comes from. So one of the patents that I've built on was from dolphin research. And with this, we bring a vibration to the body that balances the body's activity. So it regulates it.
Now, before we started our interview, we had a problem with your microphone because your News made water noises. I was actually thinking we had water damage. But I loved what this water means. So if you could explain that again, I think viewers will find that interesting too.
Sure. So the mental training that we use via News are always masked with a burbling of water. This has a very simple background because water, so flowing water, when we move along a river or something like that, the body reacts with a higher flow rate. So that means the blood flows better. Thoughts flow better too, because flowing water helps our flow. And that's why we use that as an additional effect, to get the user in the flow, to get them more dynamic.
Okay, so that means if the News now plays such a program, which is about tough topics, let's say what is perhaps demanding in terms of the solution approach, then this water ensures
that it flows better.
That all of this can be discarded, these conflicts.
Exactly.
With the News at night, reconciling these 3 points, do you solve issues, or is it really just so you can sleep?
You actually really solve issues. So the approach is that you wear the News for 8 hours. You then really have core sentences.
So you can wear it during the day too?
Exactly, you can, yeah.
Even if I use it for sleeping, so to sleep better, I can also use it during the day in the office.
Exactly, it doesn't matter. But of course, you can also use it to sleep at night. And if you have to imagine, you now have core sentences, 10, 15 core sentences, that change every week with the programme. These 7 steps build on each other. And then in the evening, you will always hear meditation over your ears to help you fall asleep. And there, this content is deliberately processed. So that means I fall asleep with meditation, and with the News, through manifesting. So, for example, one of these 7 steps is to end the fight against insomnia. Because the more pressure I put on, I want to sleep, it annoys me, I can no longer do it. We then take that out, for example. That's very irritating for many participants at the beginning, because they say, but I don't want that, and now I suddenly have to accept that I'm not sleeping, as an example. Then we turn the mental setting around. And I do that when I fall asleep during the trance. And the News, and I regulate the body in its activity just through the news. And that means that I sleep much better.
Which regulation processes are that in the body?
So first of all, we balance the hemispheres of the brain. And through the hemispherical balance, so the regulation of brain activity, we promote alpha theta. These are these areas. So the brain has frequencies. If I'm highly concentrated, for example, I have beta activities. If I'm very relaxed, calm, I'm more likely to have alpha theta. And we generate that very specifically with frequencies through the news, and that happens within 10, 12 minutes, that the brain simply balances the activity. I become calmer. And the vegetative nervous system, which is attached to the brain, starts to balance itself out within another 10 or 15 minutes. So, for example, if someone has restless legs, twitching legs or something, that stops within 15, 20 minutes. Because that's pure nerve stimulation. That's twitching of the legs. And when I relax the body, the twitching stops, for example.
Are there any findings about Parkinson's?
So this is now a very manifest form of physical imbalance. This usually goes on for decades. So we have people who use the news, but under medical supervision.
Yes, great. So at least they have a tool now. So it does no harm.
Exactly. Also in the case of a stroke, for example, or if someone is receiving chemotherapy, then it can be used to accompany this. But doctors do all of that because I'm not a doctor and I'm not actually allowed to say this.
Yes, but if there are doctors who work with it, of course that's a great support. So now we have improvement of blood pressure, then sleep, breath. What else have I forgotten? Is there anything else that has to do with the subject of sleep?
Exactly. So when you're sleeping, the mental concept behind it is actually very exciting. So that means it's a coaching that lasts over 6 months in the extended version. That means I really accompany people for 6 months, step by step, through these 7 steps to restore the sleep pattern. And at the end, we dedicate ourselves for 2 months to the question, what is your lifelong dream and your goal in life?
Okay, so then it's not just about sleeping, it's also about your whole life.
Exactly, because the exciting thing is when someone has a clear goal in life and a clear dream, then during the day they're very fulfilled with what they do. Then they go home, lie satisfied in bed, say that today was a great day, I can let go. Because I'm pursuing my lifelong dream, my goals in life. And the next morning they get up again, highly motivated, and say, let's go. And of course, for someone who works on something like that, there is perhaps the possibility that they'll then make changes in their life and say, maybe this is not my professional career, maybe it's not the partnership that I want. And then through the change in sleep, they have the strength to make this change in life too.
Wow, that really is the whole package. If you want to find out more, where can you get information?
Exactly. So the book is available in bookshops, or better, let's say in online bookstores. You can order that also from us on the news.tv page. You come to the company website, you can also order the books there.
What's the name of the book?
Finally Sleeping Well Again.
Oh, nice.
So actually a very simple title.
Finally Sleeping Well Again. Great. Great work you do there. Really great. Thank you for being here today and see you soon, dear Joshua.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, who knows? One or the other of you also have sleep problems. As we have already heard, 80% suffer from this problem. And there are solutions that really solve this without requiring surgery or drugs and bring you back into harmony and at the same time help you integrate the goal in life, which is also wonderful. I hope you were able to take something with you. And thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.